Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. And welcome to the show, everybody. My name is Kevin McDonald, and I want to thank everybody for being here. I hope everybody's having a great season this year, whatever that season is for you. And I hope everybody's having a good time. We've got a great show for you today, a very informative show about a situation that's going on in our country and around the world that is impacting a great deal of people. But before we go there, I want to introduce my co-host, whose name is John Verico. John, how are you today, sir?
I am doing outstanding, freaking outstanding. I'm going to go that way. How you doing?
He's a freaking outstanding guy. That's pretty cool.
Hey, you know, every day you just got to look at every day as a blessing. So every day you get up on the green side, you're doing good.
Every day I get up. Yeah, that's the older I get, the bigger problem that is. But we've got a great show today, and I want to thank you.
Every day is a blessing.
Exactly, and I want to thank you for helping us find Larry Linton and to bring him onto the show, because we have a very important message to share with a lot of people. So shall we bring him on so that we can talk to him directly?
I was very inspired by Larry when I first encountered this gentleman, and he's got such an amazing story. And yeah, so let's bring Larry Linton on, please.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Larry. How are you today, sir?
I'm good, thank you. Merry Christmas, happy holidays to everybody.
Indeed. And John, how did you run into Larry? How did you find him?
You know, Larry and I were on a discussion panel together, a virtual program, and when I heard his story, I was just blown away and incredibly inspired. He talked a little bit about his journey and about his book, Shaken Not Stirred, which we're going to learn a little bit more about today. But I said, Larry, there are so many people in the world who would benefit from hearing your story, and I'd love to have you come on to Positive Talk Radio and tell people about what you have experienced in your life and how you're helping others who are going through similar problem.
No, I appreciate that. Thanks, John, and thanks for inviting me on. Yeah, I've been living with Parkinson's for the past 13 years, diagnosed when I was 49, mid-career, and that's a life-altering diagnosis. But I'm here to tell you that there's a life to live with Parkinson's, and I've emerged a different person. And in fact, I like the person I've become with Parkinson's, despite the chronic, progressive and incurable disease that it is. There is a life to live after diagnosis. You've got to find that purpose. I did. And I'm here to share my story and inspire others to live their best lives that they can, even faced with a chronic illness like Parkinson's disease.
So let's start at
Larry. That's what I was so fascinated with when I first met you. Is that you have such a positive side and a positive outlook on all of this. Kevin, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to, for those who have not been touched by this this disease, which is at this moment, incurable. Describe what it is and what it does.
Yeah, sure. So to give you some background, Parkinson's is the fastest growing neurological disease in the world. Between the years 1990 and 2015, the number of people with Parkinson's doubled from 2.6 million to 6.3 million. And by the year 2040, that number is expected to double again to something like 12 million people. It's characterized by the loss of dopamine cells in our brains, and it manifests through tremors and stiffness and freezing of gait, But most of the symptoms are actually invisible. Anxiety, depression, difficulty swallowing, loss of smell. These are some of the invisible symptoms of Parkinson's. And it's always been thought of being an old person's disease. But with the rate of diagnoses and the number of people getting afflicted by it, a lot more people at a younger age are going to be living with disease for longer. So it's a disease that is not going away, and more people are going to be afflicted by it. And carry on.
Let me quickly ask you. You said that you were diagnosed at the age of 49.
Yeah.
How long do you think people may have Parkinson's before they get to a point where it actually gets diagnosed?
Yeah, that's a great question. The chances are that by the time you have the physicality of Parkinson's, the tremors that I mentioned, you're already about 3 or 4 years into the journey with Parkinson's. There are some symptoms like insomnia, depression, anxiety, which, as I say, are symptoms of Parkinson's, which I had pre-diagnosis. But it took about 2 years for me to be diagnosed with Parkinson's. Everything was ruled out beforehand. I was an anxious person, so I was on tranquilizers. I was prone to panic attacks, but nobody put their eye on Parkinson's. And it was only when 2 years later that I was tested with everything else. Parkinson's was the last sort of disease standing. And it took a neurologist about 15 minutes to diagnose me with young adult onset Parkinson's.
Wow.
And just as a point of reference, this is the same disease that Michael J. Fox has, correct?
Yes, absolutely. And Michael J. Fox was diagnosed at a much younger age. He was diagnosed at about 29. So he's had it for a lot longer. But, my life was heavily influenced by Michael J. Fox, not only for the work that he did with Parkinson's, and he has done, but when I grew up in South Africa, I modeled my whole life around Michael J. Fox based on his character on the television series that he was in, but also in his Back to the Future movies. His whole sense of humor I've tried to adapt. And in fact, I've had the opportunity to meet him. What I wanted to say to him, though, was that if I was famous, I would have been you. And if you weren't famous, you probably would have been me. But
well, hopefully he's listening, and we'll make sure he gets this information.
That's right.
So you grew up in South Africa, so that's where that beautiful accent comes from.
Yeah, I grew up in South Africa and then spent some time in New Zealand as well. And a few years ago, the most sexiest accents were voted to be South African and New Zealand. So I've got both countries covered with that.
I've got the double sexy voice.
Well, you have a wonderful accent. It's fun to listen to you.
Yeah. And so, when I first heard the name of your book, which is Shaken, Not Stirred, of course, I immediately thought of James Bond,
Right.
And the way he likes his martinis. But kind of give us a little bit of a flavor of because there's a little sense of humor involved in that. So give us a little bit of kind of how that came to be.
I think it's important to have a sense of humor. As serious as this topic is, living with Parkinson's, I think we always have to take the time to, surround ourselves with good people, and a sense of humor helps going through this disease. In fact, one of my chapters, I've got my top 10 list of perks of Parkinson's. And I won't take you through all of them, but my number one is never having to buy an electric toothbrush again.
Oh, that's funny right there.
Oh, it's sad but funny.
And another chapter is to deal with freezing of gait. As I said, one of the symptoms of Parkinson's is freezing, where you actually can't, your legs and feet get stuck to the ground. What I adopted when I encounter that is to channel John Cleese and the Monty Python skit, The Ministry of
Funny Walks.
Because I've been seen to be skipping down or walking backwards down the street to break the freeze. But as I say, you've got to be sometimes light on your feet to deal with this disease as it progresses. But a sense of humor definitely is necessary, in my opinion.
You know, one of the things that I always say to people too is you need to in life learn to laugh at yourself, because when you laugh at yourself, you then take away the ability of other people to laugh at you.
Absolutely.
So now they're laughing with you, and it's more supportive that way.
And I think it calms everybody down, because it's a serious disease. But if you make light of it, it relaxes other people, and with that relaxation, some of the symptoms you feel, leave you as well because of the commonality of it.
Now, does it progress for everybody at the same rate, or is that kind of an individual thing based upon your circumstances and your overall health and that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's a very complex disease, and everybody's journey is very unique. You meet one person with Parkinson's, and you'll meet another, and we all have distinct journeys that we follow. In my case, I think the slow progression of the symptoms is credited by the amount of exercise that I do. I'm really devoted to extensive and very cardio intensive workouts. I mean, I've just by the end of the year, I would have ridden 7,000 kilometers on my bike. That's a goal that I would ever achieve. But it certainly has slowed down the progression to the point that I'm actually taking less medication today than I was taking at the start of my journey. The doctors have allowed me to sort of play around with my medication to find that optimal balance between, mobility and freezing. But I think that in my case, the amount of exercise that I've done has been directly credited to that. Now, my first piece of advice is to everybody out there: you've got to find your own level of, intensive workout. Mine is different to everybody else's, but I encourage people that you've just got to keep moving for as long as you can, for as hard as you can, and for as long as you can still be mobile. It's crucial. More and more evidence points to the benefits of exercise to slow down, not cure, unfortunately, but slow down the progression of the symptoms.
Well, and 7,000 kilometers is across and back and forth across the United States.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And in 2 years' time, there's going to be a Toronto to Phoenix bike ride. So maybe you guys can, join up on some leg of the race, because there's going to be the World Parkinson Congress in Phoenix in 2026.
Can I go on a motorcycle?
Challenge, maybe you can drive the RV for us, because we are looking for people that can help us on the road.
So Kevin was a bus driver. He can drive something that big.
Yeah, I can do that. But so you are actually going to get out there and on a real bike, not a bike in your house, and you're going to go from Toronto to Phoenix?
That's correct. That's correct. In 2000.
Congratulations. That's really cool.
That is amazing.
Yeah. Thank you.
Now I feel like such a slacker.
Well, John, we are. I mean, might as well just put it out there. We are.
Well, I was an avid bike rider when I was younger. Yeah, going on 25 to 50 mile, bike rides was kind of an average thing for us. Now I can't get on a bike. ever since I've become a double X Adonis.
I'm a member of a bike riding team called Rigid Riders. They reluctant riders, because they've all got Parkinson's. They were once bike riders. And they have this barrier that they think that, getting onto a bike is no longer possible. But in fact, when they're on the bike, there's a tremendous sense of freedom, because, in fact, Robin Williams said that riding a bike is the closest thing to flying. And there's, you forget that you've got Parkinson's when you're on the bike, because you've got to focus on the road ahead of you. And it's really a metaphor about life. It forces you to live in the moment, to not worry about where you've come from and where you're going, but literally on the road, pedaling your legs. It's your journey. It's your journey of life. And I encourage anybody to get out there and do as much as they can.
And by the way, everybody, we're talking with Larry Linton. If you go to his website, which is livewellwithpd.com, you can find out more about him, and you can actually work with him, especially if this is new for you or you know somebody that has recently been diagnosed. There is, and we're going to talk about this when we come back from this break, there is a huge amount of issues around the paperwork and all the things that you have to do to get the help that you need to be able to make it work for you as best you can. So we're going to take a real quick break, and we'll be right back more with Larry, John Verico's co-host, and little old me. We'll be right back. Are you looking for a powerful way to grow your brand while making a real difference? Well, Positive Talk is the perfect platform to align your message with inspiration, hope, and meaningful conversations. By sponsoring Positive Talk, your brand will reach an engaged audience that values positivity and connection. People who want to support companies that share their values. Take this opportunity to showcase your business in a space that uplifts, inspires, and creates lasting impact. Don't wait. Email me, Kevin@kmmedia.pro today to learn how you can partner with us and spread positivity while growing your brand. And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. John Verico is here. Larry Linton is that correct, sir?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, good. Hey, I'm 1 for 1. How about
Proud of you, Kevin.
I'm telling you what. And
Kevin has interviewed over 2,000 people and has butchered 2,000 names.
All the time. All the time. People do not pronounce their names like I think they should, and so it's their fault.
I shouldn't say that. Actually, Kevin's a great host.
That's
why he's done this show.
I've even got Smith wrong before, so don't it can happen. So, but in any event, Larry is with us, and he was diagnosed with Parkinson's at 49.
49. Yep, that's right.
And he is working hard to live his best life with it, and to help others also live their best life with it as well, and to negotiate the minefields of all the things that you have to be aware of and do. Am I misstating that at all, Larry?
No, that's exactly what it is. It's a this is a journey that I've been on for the last 13 years, and I want to offer that 13-year sort of track record, the tricks, tips and tricks of the trade, to other people who are going through that same journey, because it's a life-changing diagnosis. But the first years are getting to that point of acceptance, and there's definitely a period of time where you go through a grieving process. I certainly went through that, and the day I got diagnosed was the start of my depression. I threw me into a depression for close to about 2 years before I got to that point of acceptance. And what I remember, I remember the date of diagnosis, but the most important date, in my opinion, is the date of acceptance, because that's when I started living with the disease and no longer against it. I accepted my fate, so to speak, and then realized that I still had a life to lead. And so with my coaching, I'm trying to offer that to others who are going through the same journey. But it's important that you get to the point of acceptance, because I think that's the most important date in my calendar, because I started running again. My career progressed. I was able to continue with my life. And then, it comes up with a discussion about, you've disclosed to your family, you've disclosed to your friends. What about disclosing to your employer. And that brings up accommodation requests and how much detail must be disclosed and what is the impact of disclosure. I mean, I live in Canada where we have legislation that protects you against discrimination, having a disability through illness. But there's no doubt in my mind that there's a stigma attached to disclosure. There's an impact on a career. And what I'm there to do is just advise and coach and plan with my clients about all the topics around disclosure. And then through the minefield of any short-term and long-term disability claims. I'm always complimented, and I appreciate people saying, wow, you look so good, Larry. The issue is that I live with a chronic progressive illness every day. And there's still impact, there are cognitive symptoms as well, which are not visible. And there's a big opportunity to educate, insurance companies that a diagnosis of Parkinson's is a life-changing disease. We are supposed to exercise. We shouldn't be penalized that we exercising and look fit and strong. We have to do that. It's imperative to live well with Parkinson's, to be physically active.
Isn't that a hideous perspective on our society that we do that? We expect that when someone has an affliction of some sort, that we expect them to look like they have an affliction. And we don't treat them like, as soon as we see them, they look fit and well,
yep,
we think they're lying about
absolutely,
about whatever's going on in the background, and they're trying to get one over. They're trying to get special accommodations when they really don't need them. Obviously, you don't need it because you look so good.
Exactly, and that's the insurance industry. It's set up to deny and defend and delay, and we're getting sicker every day. And so there's a disclosure dilemma, as I call it, and then the insurance industry that there's an opportunity to educate. And that's really where I come in with the advocacy work that I'm doing, but more importantly, to coach my clients through that journey and offering them that 13-year sort of runway of
Larry, can I ask you a question? Because I have been fortunate enough not to have witnessed someone with going through the progressive or the process of dealing with Parkinson's. Can you describe a little bit about how the disease traditionally progresses and what happens through the advance of it?
Yeah, I'll answer that with a story, if I may. When I was first diagnosed, I thought I would outrun Parkinson's. I thought I would outtrain it and just do everything to get to that top of the mountain and claim, grab that flag and claim victory that I've conquered Parkinson's. But it starts at the top of the mountain, and it's a regressive disease. It's a step down disease. You start with, tremors, which are minor, and the medication, is useful. All the medication is to deal with the symptoms. There's no cure. So every period of time, there's a step down, then there's a plateau. And what I encourage people to do is during that plateau is that's the time to focus on what you can do and no longer cannot do. But it starts with tremors that get progressively worse. It then can lead to the long-term medication that you're on. The side effects of the medication develop their own symptoms, which are sometimes worse than the Parkinson's symptoms. For example, we take medication to deal with the tremors. After a few years, the side effects of the medication results in dyskinesias, where you have very uncontrollable body movements. So, on the one hand, you've got to take your medication to move, and then after a while, you move too much involuntarily. So it is a wave of symptoms over a period of time, to the point that the only last remaining procedure is deep brain stimulation, where the medication no longer is effective, where you can no longer walk, where people can no longer swallow, as I said, loss of smell. Brain stimulation resets your runway to a certain extent, because it replaces what the medication was doing and helping you cope with the symptoms. But it is a slow step down disease, unfortunately.
And I imagine it is just frustrating as heck that something that you could do day before yesterday, you find a challenge to do today.
Absolutely. I mean, I mentioned about my bike riding, and I can get off the bike, and then an hour later, I can't walk to my car because I've got freezing. But in the early days, that would have thrown me into a depression. I would have slammed the door, went to my room, and cried myself to sleep. But 13 years later, I've got the coping skills of either just saying, okay, well, I know I was on the bike an hour ago. I'm going to sit down, break the freeze, listen to music, march on the spot. I've got all of these coping skills that I've developed, and I don't beat myself up about it. And I think that's the important thing, because I've got that firm acceptance of what I've got. And I've got my tricks of the trade, as I've said before, to cope with those. And those are helpful.
Larry, you made a really good point and said, talking about the difference between acceptance and defeat. And I think that is really critical. I'd like to delve into that when we get back from this station break. You're listening to Positive Talk Radio with Kevin McDonald. I'm John Verico, and our special guest today is Larry Linton.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
Last week, Brandon met a girl on a dating app. One day after work, he finally found the courage to ask her out. No answer. He started to panic. Was he being too pushy? Maybe it was too...
Hey, sorry I didn't respond. I was driving. I would love to go on a date. How does tonight sound?
Brandon tried to play it cool, but inside he knew. A girl so smart, so responsible. She must be a keeper.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald and John Verico. He's right over there. That's him. That's him. Don't hold me responsible for any of this. That's all his fault. And Larry Linton is our guest, and he's a coach, and he helps people deal with the effects and all the minefields that have to do with Parkinson's, and also the education around people other than somebody who's afflicted with Parkinson's, because I was a bus driver for 12 years, and one of the things that we were always told is disabilities are not necessarily always seen. And so if somebody says they have a disability, you have to accept them at face value, because you don't know, unless you're their doctor, you don't know what's going on mentally or behind the scenes and stuff. Do you find that is a major issue, Larry, with Parkinson's and people's response to it?
Oh, definitely. Definitely in the workplace, but definitely outside. When I'm driving, I park in the disabled section. I can walk into a shop, but an hour later when I'm coming out the shop, I can't. I freeze, and I use my walking stick to break it. And so there is this stigmatization, because I don't necessarily look sick, and people are very complimentary from time to time, but it's an internal issue, this Parkinson's. I'm fortunate in the sense that I don't have a very visible tremor. But when I was, before I disclosed my condition to my employer, I was very self-aware of my condition. And I practiced law, and I did have a visible tremor in my early days, but without disclosing, my client, if I'm sitting across the desk from my client and they see a lawyer tremoring, they probably have a very different perception, and they're more focused on the tremor as opposed to my legal advice that I was giving to them. But what I was doing is living a double life, because I used to come up with excuses about my symptoms. If my tremors were caused because I had too much coffee, or my dragging right leg was I blamed on too much exercise. But you've got to perpetuate those lies, essentially, and that took its toll until I reached the point where I had to disclose to my employer. But there's good timing on that. You've got to think about the disclosure and the timing of it, because you don't want to do it when you're at your worst, physically position. You want to do it when you're feeling the best, when your symptoms are well controlled. But I still think that there is an impact on a career when you disclose, and I want people to know about that and coach them through that process, so that they can be fully engaged with good understanding of what to say, how to request, and then to guide them through the short-term or long-term disability claim and the minefield of the challenges in that regard.
Larry, when you were talking about coming up with excuses that you would use as to why you had a tremor or a freeze or whatever, was that just because you were hiding from your employer or your clients what was going on, or was that still part of your own denial?
It was probably part of my own denial, because when I did disclose, my team at work, for example, they were relieved, because they knew something was up. And it really, when I saw their reaction in me, it sort of changed the way I started living my life, because I realized that I still had value. They were accepting of what I was and who I was. And it allowed me to recalibrate and recenter myself and live my life very differently to what I was doing before. And I've emerged through this, through this journey so far, transformed from that date of acceptance to somebody that I have more patience. I live with humility and grace. Every day is not golden. There are challenges with this disease, but with this disclosure, I think it's important, because I think it relieves the person living with it. The burden is lifted, and everybody is accepting of it. But I think there's a good opportunity to educate as many people as possible about it.
I think that's a brilliant point. And I think when we give people the chance to understand what's going on, I think you'll find that you'll be pleasantly surprised at what the reaction is going to be. We tend to hide stuff because we're afraid of what other people are going to think of us or how they may treat us moving forward. But I think when we do open up and share that vulnerability, we should be pleasantly surprised at the way people ultimately treat us. And then that allows us to move forward with whatever it is that's going on in our life.
Exactly right. Good point.
Larry, one of the things that I'm just struck by is that nobody really knows. You grow up and you're a teenager, and then you're in your 20s, and then you get this diagnosis of this terrible disease that isn't going to go away ever. And people, do people, when they come talk to you, do they say, Larry, why the hell me? I know it's part of the 5 stages of grief, and you've got to get through the 5 stages of grief to get to acceptance of that. But do you get that a lot, where people say, why the hell me? What did I do to deserve this?
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody feels that. I think it's very important as part of that journey to ask that question, because I think you've got to go through those 5 stages of grief. I want to help people get to that date of acceptance. And if they haven't gone through all of those 5 stages, they may not be ready to latch onto the fact that there's a life still worth living out there. It's only once you've gone through those 5 stages that you can start living. And I've seen people who are, 15 years into the journey still denying what they've got. And it's their own journey, and to a certain extent, they have to get to that point of acceptance on their own time. But I think the impact, the question that you raised about why me, it was actually my kids. When I got diagnosed, obviously shared it with my family, and my eldest son, I asked him years later what he thought of my diagnosis, and he said exactly what you said, Kevin. He said that, why my dad? I was a guy who, devoted family, devoted husband, worked hard, going through all the corporate ladder, working hard and trying to advance in my career. And his question was, why my dad? I never had, personally, I never had that anger. It was part of the 5 stages, but I've never sort of wagged my finger at somebody, the big guy, to say, why me? I was sort of born into adversity. My late father passed away with heart disease when he was 49. Oh no, sorry, he was 45. I was 4.
Oh,
so
man.
I was very aware of my own mortality growing up. But I passed 45, and then at 49 I got Parkinson's. So I've had the tools of the trade embedded in me into overcoming adversity or living with adversity. So I don't bear a grudge. I don't have the anger. In fact, believe it or not, if I had the choice, I mean, this would sound crazy, but if I had the choice of diseases to have, Parkinson's has allowed me for me to find myself and my true purpose in life. And I think that's an incredible thing, because I've become the person that I like with Parkinson's.
But Larry, when you said that, when we were on that panel together, you said something very similar, and that was when I think I reached into the chat in that group and said, "We've got to talk.
Yeah.
You've got to come on Positive Talk Radio," because that was just so inspiring and
Right.
such a strong aspect. And it just was, like I said, it goes back to what I was saying before, that you've not only come to the point of acceptance, but it's not only acceptance, it's also understanding that it's not a stage of defeat, and never at no stage.
Right. Absolutely. And it gave me time to recalibrate, to recenter, to, as I say, find my purpose. My relationships have become stronger. I advanced in my career. I've exercised more than I've ever done before. So there's a lot more that I've done with Parkinson's that I did before I was diagnosed without Parkinson's.
And you might not have done them.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely right. I mean, it gave me the time to recenter myself and the opportunity. And in fact, what I say to people is, don't wait for the diagnosis. Live your life like you've got a diagnosis of chronic, incurable, progressive illness, because that may give you focus to do the things that you should be doing and living the life with purpose, with humility and grace today. Don't wait for that diagnosis, because it may be too late.
And, the interesting thing, Larry, is that there is so much out there these days with autoimmune issues and other things that are environmental, or we don't know what the environmental impact is. I'm hopeful that one of these days we'll be able to pinpoint some of the things that we've created over time with the number of plastics and chemicals and things that are involved in our world, so that we can figure out to get rid of them, so that we can, because you're right, if this continues to grow, it's got to be partially environmental as far as everything else, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's right. There's a strong connection to environmental factors, but it's not the determinative one. That's the frustrating thing. I mean, billions have been spent on trying to find a cure, but the disease is so complex itself. and then there's no definitive cause of Parkinson's, which is frustrating in itself on the other side. So what I do is I do what I can. I know that exercise is fundamentally good and is very important for somebody with Parkinson's. So that's what I'm doing. So when I'm riding my bike, 7,000 kilometers in a year, I'm very thankful that there are scientists and clinicians hunched over a microscope looking at Parkinson's at the molecular level to find a cure. And I just hope that a cure is coming. I may not see it in my lifetime, but what I'm trying to do is live as best I can, a good quality of life for as long as I can, until there is a cure. And I would love to be talking about, having had Parkinson's and go out of business through my coaching career comes to an end because I got no more clients because Parkinson's is cured. Man, I'd celebrate that day. But until then, I'm still just doing what I can to live the best life that I can do under the circumstances.
7,000 kilometers. Has anybody ever called you the Forrest Gump of bicycle riding?
Well, in fact, I like Forrest Gump. When I started exercising again at the date of acceptance, I couldn't run. I started walking on the treadmill, and then progressed to walking, 1 minute and running 1 minute. And 5 years later, I've completed 5 half marathons since being diagnosed. So I feel like Forrest Gump to a certain extent. In fact, I may move away.
I just felt like riding.
Yeah. But maybe Michael J. Fox and Back to the Future is something that I should shelve and look at Forrest Gump instead.
I feel like running.
But talking about movie stars, one of my best movie stars is Matthew McConaughey. Maybe not for his acting, but for that Oscar acceptance speech when he got the Best Actor award, because he spoke about his hero being himself in 10 years. And that stuck with me throughout my journey so far with Parkinson's, because his hero is him in 10 years. And to a certain extent, that's what I am to myself and what I'm offering my clients. I'm seeing their road 13 years longer than they are. And that's the whole lived experience that I'm offering to them. But in my case, I would never think I would cycle 7,000 kilometers. But looking back, I've done it. Well, I'm very close to it. I've got 123 kilometers to go to the 31st of December. To get the 7,000, but I'm always pushing myself to see where I'm going to go, and I think that's a nice way to live, and I credit Matthew McConaughey for that.
I think you and Michael J. should do a public service announcement on behalf of Parkinson's and stuff, because you are truly an inspiration, young man.
Absolutely.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. I do appreciate that. I've had the opportunity to meet Michael J. Fox very briefly. He came up to Toronto, and I had to meet him, and it was great. And the first thing he said to me, he said, "How long have you had it for?" At that stage, it was, I think, 11 years, 12 years. He said, "That's great. Do you exercise?" And I affirmatively said yes. And he said, "You're looking great," and I really appreciate that. I would, if I had the opportunity, I would certainly work for his foundation. I think he's done incredible work. I mean, he is our hero. I mean, in the Parkinson's tribe, and I would always welcome the opportunity. And the best news is that he's Canadian, and so I've got something very much more in common with him, besides Parkinson's.
Go ahead, John. No. Oh, we have dead air. We can't have dead air.
No. I was saying I wasn't saying anything. It was I thought you were, so I backed off.
No, and no. I just want to tell you that I'm hopeful that this episode will be shared far and wide to a lot of people, because I know people that have had Parkinson's. They weren't now. the folks that I know were very much older.
Right.
But now it's becoming a middle-aged, and even Michael J got it younger. You
Yes.
got it at 49. And from my perspective now, and John's, I think too, 49 is very young, don't you think?
Way too young.
Yeah. No, mid-career, it's devastating news. But one of my clients is in fact in his 70s, and to a certain extent, it's the same process. You know, he had to come to the acceptance, and his issue was that he used to wake up but not get dressed. So the first thing I coached him on is to get out of bed and get dressed. Then the next week was go for a walk. Then the third or fourth week was enrolling in a Dancing with Parkinson's dance group. And he goes now to dance and checks in with me from time to time. And I think it's an example that we can all change. We can all start to live again, even with the advanced age. And you do whatever you can. You know, that's my message: is that rest is rust, and you've got to keep moving for as long as you can.
Rest is rust. Man.
Oh, that goes on a t-shirt.
That goes on a t-shirt.
Yeah, yes, indeed. By the way, we're talking with Larry Linton. Go to his website, which again is livewellwithpd.com. He is a coach, and I would call him a life coach because he works with people who have Parkinson's from all stages, from first diagnosis and the anger and stuff, all the way through acceptance, and then, all right, I've been dealt a crappy hand. How do I deal with it for the best of my ability? Right. And he does a great job with that. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing. It is so important. We need to take one quick break, and then we'll be right back. It's just gonna be a second, kids. So don't go anywhere, and we'll be right back.
You are all about having a good experience and listening to positive podcasts. Now, when you're online, you can have a positive browsing experience too. Connect to NordVPN server when you go online. NordVPN makes it simple, safe, and secure for you to explore the wide world on the web. Visit NordVPN/positive talk radio. Again, that's NordVPN/positive talk radio to get our 71% discount savings when you visit NordVPN/positive talk radio. You can try it risk-free for 30 days and stay safe while you're online at NordVPN/positive talk radio.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. By the way, you could dance to that. So dancing is good for somebody to get the blood flowing. And if you've got Parkinson's and or any other disease or non-disease,
or
I have a
just
disease
dancing
called,
is good in general.
I have a disease called I can't dance, ain't gonna dance. You can't make me dance. Na, 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 na.
He says this in front of the guy. He does this intentionally because he knows that I was a disco dance instructor back in the day.
Oh, really?
He used to do the disco duck all the time.
I was the original John Revolting, is what I was.
And so I don't dance, never have danced. But how do you when you first decided that you were going to start working out again? Or was this something that you had always done? So this was a continuation for you, or did you up it because of the disease?
Yeah, great question. Fortunately, I've always been fit. As I said earlier, I was very aware of my own mortality through my father's early passing. So dealing with cholesterol and all of that, I was very cognizant of maintaining a good level of fitness. So I played soccer, I ran, I was always relatively fit and strong. But when I started exercising, I felt good about it because it gave me a sense of freedom. When I started running again, when I overcame when my medication started working, my mobility increased, and I just started running. And I used to love running. It was always my first love in terms of exercise. I like the sound of my feet on the snow, even running in winter. And I just enjoyed that tremendously. And, the running improved my mood and improved my quality of life. I was sleeping better because I was running. So the benefits of exercise in my case have been tremendous. But, you opened the section with talking about drumming. I used to be a drummer when I grew up. I used to bang my mother's furniture to pieces with a pair of drumsticks. And when to deal with the tremors, I started hand drumming. I took myself to some teachers to learn, Latin patterns, and became a hand percussionist and I'm proud to say a semi-professional percussionist in and around Toronto. I was known with the conga guy with Parkinson's. And going back to my top 10 perks, you've got your drum rudiments. Well, when you've got Parkinson's, a single roll easily translates into a double roll with no extra.
I love your sense of humor about all of this, and because at the end of the day, sometimes a sense of humor is all you got.
That's right. I mean, everybody that I meet with Parkinson's, and I can say that with confidence because I've been on this journey for 13 years. We all have this serious condition, but we always laugh at some of the stories. I mean, with the bike rides that I've been on, and the adventures that we've had. It's incredible to think that despite the seriousness of this illness, they can still make light of it. And I think it gives us a chance to take a breath and not take it so seriously. So a laugh is just as good as anything else.
Isn't it true? I feel like a prosecuting attorney again. Isn't it true that we're not getting out of this alive anyway? So you might as well make each day count for the very, very best it can be, and then let tomorrow take care of itself.
Oh, absolutely. With this disease, you can't predict what is going to happen. It could be good and golden. I get on my bike and I ride another 100 kilometers, or I shuffle to the washroom to take my medication. But it's not for the faint of heart. But I'm accepting of it, and I think that's the difference, and that's what I can rely on to keep my sense of humor and a smile on my face, because I know that in an hour later I'm back on my bike. It's just how you live with it, and I've chosen to accept it and live differently, and my life is still thriving.
I got to tell you, man, you are a inspiration to millions.
Inspiration. Yeah,
thank
absolutely.
you. I appreciate
that. And I hope everybody out there listens to this and gets some benefit of it. And Larry, you're going to have the link for this show. Push it out there to everyone, because as well that and in your communities, because people are going to need this.
Yeah, and I think
you said earlier, you want to work yourself out of a job, right? You want to get to a point where you're not needed anymore. Wouldn't it be great if Kevin and I would find something else to do? But wouldn't it be great if everybody was already positive and we didn't need to do a show on positive talk, trying to help people to find the positivity, find that light in the darkness?
Yeah, this is not confined to Parkinson's. It's any challenge out there. I think you've always got to. I think there are uniform rules of engagement. You've got to go through that period of grief, get to the period to the acceptance, no matter what you've dealt, and realize that there's a life still to live after that.
And life will sometimes deal you crap, and you have a choice of either wallow in the stench or turn it into fertilizer. And Larry, you have created the most fertile environment I have ever encountered. You truly are an amazing inspiration.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. And I'm just one guy sharing the story, but if I could amplify that and just help one person, then my job is done.
No, it's not. because we're going to help millions.
That's,
We're going to help
that's-
millions, Larry.
And by the way, if your life deals you crap, the first thing that you have to do is to go buy a shovel. Larry has a coaching practice and he can help you through that. So livewellwithpd.com is the shovel that you need to begin shoveling the crap away. How's that for a metaphor, huh?
That's beautiful. That's
Like that.
Larry's book now. It's a few years old now, but it's out there and available, and it's Shaken Not Stirred: Living with Parkinson's Disease.
Yeah, that's a book that I wrote a few years ago now. But I think once you're an author, you're always an author. And I've got my second edition in my head to add on at least another 5-6 years to my journey. And it is a journey, and every day is another chapter. So my title is "I'm Still Living with Parkinson's Disease."
I'm
And
loving it.
please
I'm
write
loving
that
it.
book.
Yes, do that. And I know that you are also a contributing author in The Art of Connection, 365 Days of Abundance Quotes, which is coming out in 2025. So people should look for that and look for Larry's contribution to that book as well.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that opportunity to contribute. I think we all must live with abundance in our lives, and I think 365 days should cover it.
Indeed. John, would you like to take us out?
Let's do it. You've been listening to Positive Talk Radio with Kevin McDonald. I'm John Verico, your co-host, and our special guest today was Larry Linton. Larry, for the people listening in now, tell us how they can get in touch with you. Please remind us one more time.
Well, my website is livewellwithpd.com, and I'm at larry@livewellwithpd.com is the email. By all means, fire me an email, and I look forward to chatting to anybody who contacts me. Thanks for the opportunity. It's been great.
Thank you again for sharing your light with us, Larry.
You are an extraordinary human being. Don't stop being that. Thank you. Thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Our purpose is to provide everyone with a positive, entertaining, and educational experience. I would love your feedback and comments about the show, including possible topics and great guest suggestions. Please email me at kevin@kmmedia.pro. And remember, be kind to one another because each other's all we've got. That's Kevin@kmmedia.pro.